What's up, party people? It's KeysDAN with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you can have me at your next event. I am booking a lot of weddings lately. I'm so excited that we're going to be breaking out of this quarantine. I think my next wedding comes up this month, real soon. I'm stoked about it. I'm sure we'll take precautions and wear masks and stay distant from each other for the most part. We'll stay in our own little bubbles, families staying around each other. It's going to be kind of interesting. I know I had a wedding just when quarantine was starting and we didn't even know what to do. So we had an outside wedding and it went very well, and that was in March, I think late March, or maybe it was April. I don't know. But anyway, coming up soon, well, I have some weddings. Yay, I'm stoked. This week's shows, I'll be at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. That's my one public show that I've had going on for quite a few weeks now, and it's been going reasonably well. It feels almost like old times. Yes, we're taking care of each other at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas, the video dance party karaoke jam. We've been wearing masks on the way in, and when we interact with each other, and when we're standing up, interacting with each other, wear the mask. But when you're sitting down having your drinky drinks or having some good food at the Rab, you can take the mask down so you can get at your eating hole, at your drinking hole, right there, in the front of your face. Your mouth, people, your mouth. All right. But take care of each other. That's for sure. Over at the Rab. And that's Friday night. That's from 8 p.m. until almost 1 a.m. They got a full bar, kitchen's open, pool tables. In fact, they got a pool tournament on Friday nights. So you can have some fun playing pool while you're waiting to sing next to me on stage at the Rab, Conway, Arkansas, Friday night. Yeah, be there. The place to be. All right. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Trump urges North Carolinians to test system by illegally voting twice. President Trump on Wednesday said during a trip to North Carolina, a battleground state, that people should vote by mail and then cast another ballot in person to test safeguards against double voting. Quote, if their system's as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote, end quote, said Trump, who has claimed without evidence that widespread mail-in voting will result in extensive fraud. It is illegal to intentionally vote twice. Attorney General William Barr echoed Trump's claim, telling CNN that mail-in voting, quote, is very open to fraud, end quote, and people advocating expanding mail-in voting due to the coronavirus pandemic, quote, are playing with fire, end quote. Barr also said that racism isn't, quote, as common as people suggest, end quote, in protest against police shootings of unarmed black men and women. This is according to the Washington Post and CNN. Number 2, Biden calls for charges against officers who shot Blake Taylor. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden said Wednesday that the white Kenosha, Wisconsin police officer who shot Jacob Blake, an unarmed black man, in the back 7 times, quote, needs to be charged, end quote. Blake also called for charges over the police killing of Breonna Taylor, a black woman shot in her Louisville, Kentucky apartment during a raid. Biden also called for arresting anyone committing violence during protests. He made his comments the day after President Trump visited Kenosha, focusing on supporting police and businesses affected by violence. Biden plans to visit Kenosha on Thursday. He vowed to help try to, quote, heal the city, end quote, and accused Trump of, quote, throwing gasoline on the fire, end quote, of racial tensions. Trump has falsely accused Biden of championing violent protesters and pushing to, quote, defund the police, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 3, Trump orders cutting funding to cities run by Democrats. President Trump ordered federal agencies in a memo released Wednesday to find ways to slash funding to Democrat-run cities roiled by protests against the systemic racism in policing, including Portland, Seattle, Washington, and New York. Quote, anarchy has recently beset some of our states and cities, end quote, Trump wrote to the Office of Management and Budget and Attorney General William Barr. Quote, my administration will not allow federal tax dollars to fund cities that allow themselves to deteriorate into lawless zones, end quote. The memo came as Trump focuses his re-election campaign on violence coinciding with mostly peaceful anti-racism protests. A spokesman for Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York tweeted that the memo was, quote, a racist campaign stunt out of the Oval Office to attack millions of people of color, end quote. This is according to the New York Times. Number 4, CDC tells states to prepare to give health workers coronavirus vaccine. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reportedly has told state public health officials to be ready to administer a coronavirus vaccine to healthcare workers and others facing high infection rate risk as soon as late October. The CDC guidance provided the latest indication that the government is speeding up its push for a vaccine to fight the pandemic, which has killed more than 184,000 people in the U.S. President Trump said last week in his speech at the Republican National Convention that a vaccine might be ready before the end of 2020. The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has said a vaccine could be made available to some groups before clinical trials are completed, provided early results are overwhelmingly encouraging. This is according to the New York Times and the Associated Press. Number 5, Fauci rejects herd immunity strategy considered by White House. Dr. Anthony Fauci on Wednesday pushed back against the idea that the U.S. should pursue herd immunity against COVID-19 after neuroradiologist Scott Atlas, a top medical advisor to President Trump with no background in epidemiology, reportedly suggested the Trump administration should embrace the controversial theory of herd immunity to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Health experts pointed out the drawbacks. Some research has suggested reaching herd immunity would require allowing millions of infections and thousands more deaths, though other data points to a lower threshold. Either way, quote, we're not there yet, end quote, Fauci said. Quote, that's not a fundamental strategy that we're using. The fundamental strategy is to try to prevent as many infections as you possibly can, end quote, by identifying a case, isolating the person who has it, and contact tracing. This is according to Politico. Number 6, report DHS withheld warning of Russian disinformation on Biden's mental health. The Department of Homeland Security withheld publication of a July intelligence bulletin warning of a Russian effort to push, quote, allegations about poor health. Let me start over. Quote, allegations about the poor mental health, end quote, of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. The draft bulletin was submitted to the department's Legislative and Public Affairs Office and was not intended for the public, but it was supposed to be sent to federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. But an hour after it was submitted, DHS Chief of Staff John Gautanis asked officials to, quote, hold on sending this one out, end quote, until discussing it with Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Chad Wolf. According to an email obtained by ABC News, the report was never distributed, even though analysts had, quote, high confidence, end quote, in the assessment. House Democrats vowed to investigate. This is according to ABC News. Number 7, Germany says a Soviet-era nerve agent used to poison Navalny. Germany's government said Wednesday that it had determined that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was poisoned with a chemical nerve agent from the Novichok group of toxins. Navalny fell ill during a flight from Siberia to Moscow last month. He was initially treated in Russia, then transferred to Berlin. German government spokesman Stefan Seibert said toxicology tests at a German military laboratory provided, quote, unequivocal evidence of a chemical nerve agent, end quote. Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany said the crime, quote, raises very serious questions that only the Russian government can and must answer, end quote. Novichok is a Soviet-era military toxin that was used against former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter in a 2018 attack in England. Russian officials said they were waiting for more information from Germany. This is according to the New York Times and CNN. Number 8. Two polls show Biden with solid but narrowing lead over Trump. Two reputable national polls released Wednesday suggest different trajectories for the presidential race, but agree on where it stands at the end of both main political conventions and at the start of the final sprint to November 3rd. A poll from Grinnell College and Seltzer and Company shows Democrat Joe Biden with an 8 percentage point national lead over President Trump, 49% to 41%, an improvement from Biden's 4-point lead in March. A Suffolk University USA Today poll shows Biden up by 7 points, 50% to 43%, which is much narrower than his 12-point advantage in June. Biden holds a wide lead among moderates, independents, and suburban women, while Trump leads among white men without college degrees. This is according to Grinnell College and USA Today. Number 9, federal debt to exceed size of economy for first time since World War II. U.S. government debt will exceed the size of the economy in the 2021 federal fiscal year for the first time since World War II, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said Wednesday. The federal debt hit 98% of the nation's gross domestic product in the current fiscal year, which ends September 30th. Due to the government's massive coronavirus relief spending, the borrowing surge has not panicked investors who have continued to buy U.S. Treasury assets as a safe alternative volatile stocks during the pandemic. As a safe alternative to volatile stocks during the pandemic. Quote, we thought we had a full 10 years before reaching this unfortunate milestone, but the virus wiped out a decade of fiscal space in just a few months, end quote, said Michael Peterson, head of the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization focused on the country's long-term fiscal challenges. This is according to the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. Number 10, Mets Hall of Fame pitcher Tom Seaver dies at 75. The former New York Mets superstar pitcher Tom Seaver, often referred to as, quote, the franchise, end quote, has died of complications from Lyme disease, dementia, and COVID-19. He was 75. Quote, we are heartbroken to share that our beloved husband and father has passed away, end quote. His wife, Nancy Seaver, and daughters, Sarah and Ann, said Wednesday in a statement to the Baseball Hall of Fame, quote, we send our love out to his fans as we mourn his loss with you, end quote. Seaver dropped out of public life in March 2019 after he was diagnosed with dementia. He established himself as the greatest Met in the eyes of fans by compiling a record of 311 wins and 3,640 career strikeouts. He won 3 Cy Young Awards and helped lead the, quote, Miracle Mets, end quote, to a championship in 1969. This is according to the New York Daily News. That's 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter. I hope everybody out there is doing reasonably well. I just realized if you're looking at the video, I left the What Makes You Famous banner up there. I guess I could switch it over to the What Makes You Smarter one for the end of the video. This broadcast equipment. I'll figure it out eventually. Scenes. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're doing reasonably well. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you're up to in this time. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Speaking of hashtags, I've been streaming video games online. I'll probably do some streaming in the next few minutes. I don't know what game to play. I've been playing Fortnite. That thing's addictive. I know I have World of Warcraft loaded up. I'm waiting for Marvel's Avengers for tomorrow. I know some people have been streaming Marvel's Avengers, but I'm not one of those fortunate people that got it ahead of time. I have it coming tomorrow. I'll wait for it tomorrow. And you can look for that using the hashtag KeysDAN Gaming. Yeah, I like these hashtags. KeysDAN Gaming. Find it everywhere. Add me wherever you're watching my gaming streams, especially Twitch or Facebook Gaming, either one. All right, that's it for me. This has been What Makes You Smarter. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.